Palestinians
and the
Palestinians
who have
groups at Oxford University followed the steps of their Harvard peers as they too released a joint statement which blames Israeli occupation as the root cause of the ongoing violence.
Are you seriously keep on asking me about Palestinian civilians? What's wrong with you? Have you not seen what happened? We're fighting Nazis.
Is Palestine responsible for what is happening to them? Hello, and welcome to our channel. Today, we are going to discuss a somewhat controversial topic, which is the Palestine-Israel conflict. On October 7, Hamas attacked important Israeli military bases with about 5,000 missiles. This created an uproar, and in turn, Israel's retaliation on the Gaza Strip also resulted in a high number of civilian casualties and a humanitarian crisis. And this has sparked heated debates about who is to blame for this conflict. To get a clear picture of the conflict between these two countries, let's understand their current situation. Israel, a Jewish Zionist nation nestled along the shores of the Mediterranean Sea in the Middle East, stands as a beacon of democracy amidst a region mostly governed by non-democratic regimes. Bordered by Lebanon to the north, Syria and Jordan to the east, Egypt to the south, and the Mediterranean Sea to the west, Israel has emerged as a regional powerhouse. With its robust economy and formidable military, Israel stands apart from its predominantly Arab and Muslim neighbors. However, Israel's actions in the West Bank have drawn criticism from many quarters. The construction of roads in the West Bank has effectively segregated Palestinian settlements, granting exclusive access to vehicles bearing Israeli license plates, commonly used by Jewish settlers occupying Palestinian land. These settlers, often ardent Zionists, have unlawfully seized Palestinian territory, often armed by the Israeli military. Their presence has led to frequent harassment and intimidation of the local Palestinian population, with the aim of forcing them out of their homes. Allegations against the Israeli military extend beyond arming the settlers to include accompanying them on raids into Palestinian settlements, providing protection to these settlers during these incursions. The Israeli army's establishment of checkpoints throughout the West Bank has further tightened its control over the movement of goods and people. Each Israeli soldier wields the authority to detain Palestinians for up to 6 hours. These actions have had a profound impact on the lives of Palestinians in the West Bank. The roads have impeded their access to essential services like hospitals and schools. Checkpoints have further restricted their freedom of movement, while the settlers' harassment and intimidation have fostered a climate of fear and anxiety. Consequently, some experts have labeled Israel a rogue nation, disregarding international norms and laws while posing a threat to global security. Palestine is a de jure sovereign state in West Asia. This state is claimed by the Palestine Liberation Organization as the homeland of the Palestinian people. Palestine has 3 unconnected territories, which are currently under Israeli occupation from 1967 Six-Day War. They are East Jerusalem under direct control of Israel, West Bank under control of Fatah, PLO, Gaza Strip under control of Hamas. The PLO politically suffered serious setbacks in recent times. Out of 3 territories, they have control only on the West Bank, and that too partially. In 2006, they lost elections, and Hamas got majority and briefly had a coalition government, but did not last long because of internal disunity. Palestinians today generally think the PLO is corrupt and weak. Recent polls by the Palestine Center for Research and Survey released their finding that if elections take place, there's a good chance that the next leader of the Palestinians will be Hamas chief. Actually, according to the survey, Hamas would win comfortably as 58% of Palestinians support Hamas, whereas PLO garners only 37%. Hamas, a Palestinian political and militant group, emerged in 1987 during the First Intifada, an uprising against Israeli occupation. Hamas currently controls the Gaza Strip, seized from Fatah after violent clashes in 2007. Recently, however, the two organizations have softened their stance, normalizing relations to some extent. PL, the Palestine Liberation Organization, now considers Hamas a political and military rival. While both groups share the common goal of Palestinian self-determination, they differ in ideologies and political approaches. Hamas is banned as a terrorist organization by Israel, the United States, the European Union, Canada, and Egypt. Despite this, Hamas enjoys considerable popularity among Palestinians, while the PLO, though internationally recognized as Palestine's legal representative, is unpopular and distrusted by many Palestinians. This led to a situation where no one could represent the Palestinian people and provide adequate leadership and negotiate with Israel and international communities. This is the Achilles heel for Palestinian, for them to have not an organization which fulfill the aspiration of Palestine people. So now, we have introduced all the actors involved in this conflict. I have to clarify that not all Palestinians support Hamas. Everyone who refers to this issue as a Palestine-Israel conflict is not true at all, and this conflict should be referred to as the Hamas-Israel conflict. Allegations. The conflict between Israel and Hamas has been ongoing for over a month now, with both sides blaming each other for starting the war. While it's true that Hamas initiated the attacks on Israel, the Israeli retaliation has been severe, resulting in widespread displacement of Palestinians from North to South Gaza. The civilian death toll is rising daily, with a significant number being children and women. What Israel says about it: we have the right to self-defense. We need to protect Israeli citizens. We're fighting terrorism. We need to maintain security. What Palestinians say about Israel's army's brutality: Israel's actions on Palestinian land are illegal. Israel's actions constitute a form of collective punishment. Israel uses excessive force, which leads to the deaths of innocent Palestinian civilians. So, who is responsible for this conflict? The conflict between Israel and Palestine is complex, and to better understand the situation, I will tell a short story that might give you some clarification on this complex issue. A camel in tent. A traveler in the desert is resting in his tent when a camel comes near to the tent and inserts its nose inside the tent because of the cold night, and it wants to seek shelter. The traveler takes pity on the camel and allows it to keep its nose inside the tent. As night progresses, the camel feels more cold because temperature drops further and finds the tent more warmer. And gradually, the camel pushed its body inside the tent more and more. The traveler does not want to be cruel and make room for the camel, and eventually the camel occupies the whole tent and the traveler is thrown outside and left in the cold. From this fable, you might have guessed, but still, I am your host and have an obligation to explain. So, the camel is Israel, the tent is the land, and the traveler is Palestine. No, wrong. Palestine is not the traveler, but the British, who was an overlord at that time and is a traveler in this story. History. Palestine was under the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century. During that time in Europe, Jews created a movement to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This movement is called Zionism and picked up steam among Jews because of anti-Semitic views that were prevalent among Europeans at the time. In the late 19th century, only Zionism's hardliners were migrating to Palestine, while other Jews opted for destinations like France and America. This resulted in a Jewish population of barely over 8% in Palestine by the early 1920s. However, this situation took a dramatic turn due to the actions of one man, Adolf Hitler, who unleashed a wave of persecution against Jews in Germany. Driven by the horrors of the Holocaust and the persecution in Nazi Germany, Jews began migrating en masse to Palestine from the 1930s onward. This exodus significantly altered the demographic landscape of Palestine. Following the Ottoman Empire's defeat in World War I, much of its past territories fell under the control of France and Britain. Palestine and its neighboring regions came under British administration, and the British government supported Jewish migration since it pledged to the international Jewish community the establishment of a national home for Jews. This led to a rapid demographic shift, with around 60,000 Jews migrating to Palestine in 1935 alone. By 1947, the Jewish population had grown to about 34% of Palestine's total population. From the start, the British encouraged the Jews to form parastatal organizations while not providing Palestine with the same opportunities to develop its own institutions. These organizations later became the foundation for Israel's strong and functional government. Meanwhile, the British's promotion of new religious organizations sparked rivalries among traditional rulers in Palestinian Arab communities. Why did the British favor Jews and not Palestine? The British pledged to Jews that they would be allowed to create their homeland, and when the Ottoman Empire lost World War I and the British became the new overlord, they kept their promise. Even though at that time, the Jewish population was only about 8% of the total Palestinian population, they recognized the Jewish claim for land, but not Palestine. During the Mandate years, only the looming threat of the Second World War forced the British to regulate the Jew migration, but it was already too late as the demographic changed vastly and Jews were no longer an insignificant minority. Were the Brits playing favorites between Jews and Palestine? The answer is yes, and also no. The British policy was to control the colonies through a divide and rule policy. Palestine, a land of diverse ethnic and religious groups, fell under British rule during the Mandate period. Seeking to maintain control, the British authorities exploited these divisions, favoring minority groups like Christians and Jews over the majority Arab population. One strategy involved encouraging Jewish immigration to Palestine without restrictions, disregarding the demographic impact. The British, to some extent, encouraged conflicts between these groups, positioning themselves as arbiters to resolve the issues they had created. During the Mandate, Palestinians and Jews operated under separate administrations. However, the British granted Palestinians fewer opportunities and even established and funded religious groups to challenge traditional Palestinian leadership. This weakened Palestinian leadership, leaving the elite divided and indecisive, a problem that persists today. The Jewish lobby played a crucial role in their favor, leveraging their significant population in Europe and America. Their close ties to the elite in these countries enabled them to influence governments and gain support for their cause. Also, the British were racist during colonial times and often looked down upon the natives, and they were no different in Palestine. By the 1930s, the Jewish movement in Palestine, headed by European Jews, was well educated and rich, as they brought their wealth from Europe and had connections all over Europe and America. As for Palestine, there was one incident that shows how the British ruling class treated the Palestinian leaders as they went as a delegation to London to request self-rule, which was awarded to other Arab countries under the control of Britain, but not to Palestine. The casual racial slur on Palestine leadership during the meeting and the fact that they were treated no better than slaves show what the British thought of Palestine people. In 1948, as the British mandate over Palestine came to an end, the United Nations proposed a partition plan that would divide the region into separate Jewish and Arab states. While the Jewish leadership accepted the plan, the Palestinian leadership rejected it, fearing the loss of their homeland. The following year, as the British mandate formally ended, Israel declared its independence. This declaration sparked the Arab-Israeli War of 1948, during which Israeli forces captured additional territory beyond what had been allocated to them in the UN partition plan. The war also resulted in the displacement of a large number of Palestinians who fled their homes and became refugees. This displacement, known as the Nakba, or catastrophe in Arabic, remains a deeply painful and contentious issue in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In 1961, during the Six-Day War, Israel further expanded its territory, capturing the remainder of Palestinian territories, including the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. As you have learnt the history of Palestine and Israel, which was complex and unresolved, and there was no clear right or wrong or hero and villain, but that was not so after Israel independence and the way they have treated the Palestine for the past 70 years. Palestine has lived under the control of Jews with harsh restrictions on movements and goods. Violence and further degradation of Palestinian people on their own land created various resistance groups to fight Israel, and one of them is Hamas. To be clear, I am not supporting Hamas ideology or the violence they commit against Israeli civilians, but as a person from a former colonial country, I can understand that their cause is just. And I only regret that they don't understand the limits of violence. And I will leave the audience with this quote: "One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter." And I hope this video helps you make up your own mind on this complex issue. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content.